So let's get into the second half of our program. We're going to welcome Tom Lundy with Impact Floats.
I don't think so. How's everybody doing today? Good? I'm going to take you down a trip of weirdness, just so you're aware. I've been a massage therapist for about a decade now. I actually entered massage therapy school about 2 years, which is 10 years ago now, after my wife was diagnosed with cancer. Since then, she's had a cascade of physical ailments that have caused me to say, whoa, 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 what am I doing with my life? This is my partner. This is the person I should take care of. So I've spent the past 10 years involving myself in as many different personal efforts on self-care as possible. I'm not an expert. I'm a massage therapist. I'm licensed by the state, and I try to pay attention to everything I can. That also goes with some things that I deal with on my own side of things, and I deal with anxiety, depression. I've got a hyper-awareness disorder, and I'm on the autism spectrum. So bear with me if I get a little weird up here, it's just something that we deal with on a daily basis. When it becomes overwhelming, when you're doing something that's not part of your normal routine, it just grates on you, and it can be really difficult. But I spent a lot of time on this, so I'm going to lean on it a bit. There's a lot of information in here for Impact Floats. We are trying to create an environment of better living through flotation therapy as well as body work, but mostly flotation therapy. This is what we're going to be doing, both massage and flotation therapy. I'm reaching out to as many different spas and massage therapists in town as possible so that they can bring their clientele to us, use our table, and then let their client float. We know that there's a healthcare crisis in this country. Raise your hand if you think that everybody's okay all the time. No, because it's not. A lot of our exterior stuff we deal with. You break a bone, you've got a laceration, you get, an injury of some sort, take care of it. It's the internal stuff that nobody sees that we're not taking care of because we're visual people. If you don't see it, it's not happening. You can see some of the statistics on what we're dealing with. A quarter of all children, 13 to 18 years, are affected by an anxiety disorder. Like, how do you deal with that? How do you help kids? As well as we'll touch on the veterans and first responders here in a little bit. These are some of the reliefs for flotation therapy. This goes across to massage as well, if you guys are familiar with it. I normally go for the psychological effects of it. That's because of my family and what we're dealing with. Physiological aspects of flotation therapy are amazing. So if you're an athlete and you're just dealing with constant soreness, get in the tank. The alleviation of gravitational pull on your body allows for deep muscular and tissue nutrients. Your blood vessels actually open up, your muscles relax, and it's really, as a massage therapist, it's hard to say this, it's almost as good as massage therapy depending on what you've got going on. The relief that you get from health conditions, I put in here arthritis, Parkinson's, fibromyalgia, and chronic pain. Like, this covers a huge swath of our society. These are a lot of people that are just trying to go to work every day, but they're in pain or they can't help but shake. They've got things that maybe you don't deal with, or maybe you've got a loved one that deals with something. My wife has fibromyalgia. So for her, sometimes just putting on clothes in the morning, that's painful. And it hurts for me to know that I could maybe help, but she can't take the weight of my hands on her body. So that's kind of a come and go thing. It's what we deal with. What is flotation therapy? At its base, it is about 10 to 11 inches of hypersalinated water. That's 800 to 1,100 pounds of magnesium sulfate. That's medical grade Epsom salt. So if you've ever taken a foot bath with Epsom salt, if you've ever done an Epsom salt scrub, you're already aware that the body takes on magnesium, which magnesium it's integral in about 300 body processes. That's crazy. One thing does that much for your body and you need it. And it's, I think it's like 60% of our country is magnesium deficient. That can cause a lot of things, from physiological to psychological issues. Research, this guy's like my spirit animal. His name is Dr. Feinstein. He's over at Lieber. There's the Laureate Institute for Brain Research in Oklahoma City. They are currently, and they have already done a lot of really great studies. I'll show you some results here in a second. This is just the most visual. There are places all over the planet that for decades have been doing research on this to find out, what is it? You go into this body of water, you close the door, it gets dark and quiet. That sounds so weird. My wife says it sounds like a water coffin. It's not. Don't go there. It's imagine walking into a walk-in freezer about the size of a queen-size mattress, and you can lay down in it. So the ceiling is for what we're going for, and for a lot of the facilities, it's like 6 feet between your face and the ceiling. Non-claustrophobic. My wife does deal with that a little bit too. Oh my gosh, everything's about my wife, isn't it? But these folks they've constructed, this is actually their pool that they have in their facility. It's a round pool, and people can float in there with no walls, so it's actually lending itself really well to people that are claustrophobic. That way they could get a wider swath of people that they could study. This is just some of the information that's come through. These are all 50 participants. The red bar is pre-float. The blue bar is post. If you are highly anxious, look at this number one person over here. What kind of change is that on your life? What decisions are you going to make? How effective are you going to be at work? What's it going to be like dealing with your kids when they've had a terrible day, but you're on the blue bar instead of the red? That's where we're at. And for kids that are in school, imagine trying to pay attention in class when you're worried about just surviving the day. That's not a natural thing. You get these kids into these float tanks, they become more effective as students as well as individuals. This right here, just the mental and physical benefits. The red bar is the decrease, blue bar is the increase. You can see just the way that they've compiled this information shows how drastic the difference is and how varied it is. This is a very difficult thing to tell people about. Because you're like, yeah, I'm going to put you in some water. You're going to float around for about an hour, 90 minutes, and then you're going to be better. Better at what? For me, I think everything. At least that's absolutely how it is for me. Our outreach program, we understand how important it is to get everybody working on their A game all the time, physically and mentally. Our program, the way that we're running our crowdfunding effort right now, which started on the 1st, is that for every 1,000 floats we can pre-sell through this endeavor, I can give away 500 floats to the community. That's veterans, that's first responders, that's nurses, and that's educators. Now, our patrons or our backers, as it were, since we're going through Indiegogo, those people are actually going to direct us. So if you get a couple of floats, you say, hey, I'm a first responder, I'd like that for me, you can keep that. As well as, healthcare professionals, you guys are the ones that see everything. You're the ones that, you've got the hardest jobs. You take care of the sick ones. And those are usually the people that lash out, that are angry and afraid. And those jobs are hard to have. So we want to take care of them as well. Educators, who thinks teachers have a really easy job? No hands. That's not surprising, is it? I want to incorporate those, not just because my wife is a teacher, but also because these are the people that are helping you raise your kids. They need to be as calm, cool, collected, informed, and on their A game as possible. I keep on saying A game. Who are we? There's that guy. I left out here that I'm a photographer. I've been building my portfolio of photography for our effort to get the word out. Also, it's a lot cheaper to take your own pictures than pay for somebody else's. This is my wife, Stephanie. She's beautiful. Not that that's important, but it is. She's been teaching for 14 years. So 2 years into her teaching career, she got smacked with cancer. She had a sublingual tumor. They actually did a section 5, and that means that they open up and they took out lymph nodes, they took out tissue, and the tumor was about the size of my thumb. So immediately after surgery, they said, don't touch the trach, and you're probably never going to speak normally again. So that was pretty traumatic. We actually met in choir, so that was like the heart of it. We sing together. She's fine now. She's never stops talking. And she sings, she plays piano, and we'll get some Bohemian Rhapsody going. The kids love it. But she's also been working for the Department of Youth Services in Waverly, so she teaches the kids that are least lucky amongst us, in my opinion. A lot of these kids are dealing with stuff that comes out of their environment, and we just want to be able to set up programs to help these kids post care so that they're more likely to be effective. These are some of the businesses that we have partnered with already, offering a 10 to 15% discount. It depends on where we're at. I work for Body Retreat right now. I also do traveling massage therapy. I take that little guy everywhere I can. Today, actually, I don't have something to give away, but I can do chair massage. So that, and I mean that's all I have. This whole thing is a shoestring budget. I've done all my marketing through Facebook, just word of mouth, showing up places, doing free massage. Giveaways, because you just play to your strengths, and I am a really good massage therapist. Not that anybody in this room would know. You'll find out later. Someone will say something nice. Hopefully. So anyway, we've got our network that we're working with. How you can help back to the crowdfunding, which is going to answer your question preemptively. Sorry, Kelly. We've got a whole range of ways that people can help us out. You can get a wristband. $15 for a wristband is like highway robbery, but it's not about the wristband. It's about the project. Same thing with everything else until we get into the perk packages for our floats. So I'm taking a 25% hit on every single float during the crowdfunding campaign. So you guys, if anybody who contributes to us, is actually going to get membership prices or our prices for our veterans, first responders, nurses, and educators. I say nurses all the time. Healthcare professionals. So that's massage therapists, that's CNAs, just care providers in general. It's a little complex. We're not going to get super deep into it right now. Crowdfunding, for a lot of people, are unfamiliar with it. It's a strange and weird animal. You're going around the banks. Whoa, don't do that. You can, absolutely. You can say, hey, listen, I've got this great idea, and I've got a terrible credit rating. Nobody's going to give me money, but I've done my homework, and I think we can do it if we do it together. A lot of the younger folks are aware of it, and they contribute, so it's a good deal. Our goals, bare minimum, it's $50,000 to put one tank in. That's everything, though. That's utilities, that's rent, that's construction, and that's the tank themselves. You can get a $5,000 tank that'll go in your house. That's fine. But for sanitary reasons and for longevity of the float, we want to provide the environment that is best suited for this kind of therapy, which means complete light and sound mitigation, which is really, really hard. We've actually looked at downtown, but a lot of it's really close to the railroad tracks, and that increases the expenditure quite a bit. 2 tanks at 90, 150,000 would give us 3 tanks. Our real goal, what we'd like to have, our dream, is a 4-tank float facility that we run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we're able to facilitate just programs for everybody that I've already mentioned. We've looked at a couple locations here. Both of those are out at this point. So that's why we just blew past that. These are our float options. This, to me, this says a lot. That's a baby in the tank, and that's what we need. We need our youth involved in this and help them while they're young, because we don't often engender ideologies that are about self-care. It's about work hard, grit through the pain, and don't deal with anything that's too messy or complicated. We just want things simple and smooth. The tank will give that to us because it gives you the ability to change who you are inside. There's a constant negative stream of thoughts that I have because of my anxiety and my depression. For me, to shut that down for a couple of minutes and just have peace is transformative. My second float, maybe too much information, I cried like a baby because it was the second time in my life since I could remember that I felt safe. And that's a thing that a lot of people have, especially if you have anxiety. So, getting into one of these things and just letting go was amazing. The one on the right, this is, you can see the showers immediately outside of the door. It just solves one of the issues because salt eats everything. So we have to keep that in mind. And then the tank itself, it's hard to tell from this picture, but it's like the size of a queen-size mattress. So it's large enough for you to get in there and starfish it if you're by yourself. And then if you've got a partner that wants to float but is afraid to do it, you can go in there together. It's really, it's a great experience just to be quiet with your significant other and just be there with them. It's really supportive and healing as well. And then, you know, that's it. That's the whole thing. I guess now we do questions. Does anybody have questions? Yes, sir.
First of all, I think it's a great concept. How many square feet do you need, or how many square feet would you like to have if you were to hit your ultimate goal?
The ultimate goal, I've talked with a couple of contractors, and it just depends. If each float room is about 15 by 15 feet, which is minimum for what we need for these things, you're multiplying that by 4, and then you've also got to add in floor space for like yoga classes and just gatherings in general. So I mean, it's like hard to put a number on that. Pretty large, maybe 10,000 square feet. That's a huge building, but that's like our main goal is a huge facility. So, and we've even looked into shipping container buildings as well. So those are fun and economic. So, yes, ma'am.
Is there an age minimum, age max?
Your ability to enter and leave the environment is pretty much it. Once you get to a certain age, it's impossible to do that kind of thing on your own. A lot of the owners that I've spoken with have said that their policy is actually, if you can get in and out with help that you bring, then they'll let you float. Some people deal with issues like incontinence. You can't be in the tank with that because that kind of thing will ruin the liquid that's in there. And that solution is expensive. So you're talking 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in the water, and then you've got to chuck all that out, buy new salt, put new water in, you lose all your floats. So some people can't get in. Some skin conditions would prevent people from going in. Lesions, major surgery. It's not until after the wound is healed that it'd be safe because it's salt water. Ouch. But children, the youngest ones that I've heard of are like 5 and 6 years old. It depends on whether or not they can keep themselves from getting their hands wet and then touching their eyes. So a lot of people actually use goggles. But no, I mean, there's beyond that, it's pretty safe. Our 11-year-old son has floated on a couple different occasions. And then the Saturday, all of my kids and my wife are floating in Shiloh over by St. Louis. So we're going to be doing that online. So, Kelly.
So what is the sanitation process?
Okay, so 2 to 3 times cycled between each and every float. There's a UV plus peroxide. Basically, the ultraviolet light activates the peroxide and it destroys all biomaterial, and then it's filtered out. So you don't get viruses, you don't get bacteria. There is a daily routine where each float center, they check their pH levels, they check their specific gravity to know if they need to put more water or more salt in, as well as monthly checks. They actually get the water and they send it off to be checked for like E. coli and such. So very sanitary. Yes, ma'am.
So now you said that you were going to go somewhere near St. Louis. I didn't hear the place, but how many locations around the country would you do?
There's a few hundred around the country. Within about an hour's drive, there's like 3 or 4 here. So Columbia's closest, and then there's Kansas City. There's a couple places there. The one that I would suggest if you guys are interested, between the two is Floating KC. They're amazing. They got a great facility. It's a cool vibe, and it's really relaxing. I've been to Kansas City, Lawrence, Springfield, a couple different places in St. Louis. I've been also to Wentzville. So there's not a lot of places, and it's the idea that technically I'm selling nothing, because that's what this is. It's an experience of nothing. It's an absence of the cars and the cell phone ring and the kids asking daddy, 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 or mommy, 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 mommy. It's no expectation. It's time it's just you. It's just you. So it's beautiful. And when you're in there, it's just your heartbeat and your breathing. That's your sensory input. When you're in there for a few minutes, you get that zero gravity effect because of salt in the water, and you float, but then it's just you in the tank. There's nothing else. So your body shuts down the proprioceptive network. That's a neural network that feeds information back to your central nervous system. You shut that off, and the brain goes into theta state, which anybody who knows anything about like meditation, that's the goal. That's the goal. You can get there in a few float sessions, and you're like a master meditator. So, all that. Yes, ma'am.
So with the anti-gravity, is there any possibility of you going under, or fearing of going under, or are you?
There's a possibility of fearing it, but no. I've seen all different body shapes go in. You can't sink. And for some people, it's actually hard to turn over because you're pushing your body down into a liquid that's pushing you up because the specific gravity is so high. Imagine the Dead Sea plus it's like 15, 20% density. So you float on it. This lady's not touching the bottom. Normally your line between water and air, it settles right between the ear and the eye. It's the sweet spot. Yes, sir.
What is water temperature?
Skin temperature, 93.5 degrees within a certain tolerance level. Some people run a little hot, some people run a little cold. We're strange animals. None of us are the same. And there are actually float centers that will track whether or not you had a good float because the water was too warm or too cool, and they will adjust that temperature for you on your arrival. So it's a neat concept. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any insurance companies that pay for this kind of thing?
Right. That's kind of that's the struggle right now. I'm a massage therapist, so if your insurance will cover massage therapy, I've been told from the board and a couple different insurance agencies that I can claim that as part of my my practice. This is ancillary therapy. So, ladies first.
I just wondered, do you run it out of your home for now?
No, it is so expensive. Just being here is a financial output that I wasn't even prepared for today. But you grind hard when you got a goal. I would like to have one. Some people do. You don't really want to share water unless it's got a really strong filtration system, which a lot of people do, like Olympic-sized swimming pool filtration systems. If you guys are wondering if anybody who knows stuff, Joe Rogan's got one in his own home, and he's got one in his business, and he has people float all the time just to kind of get the word out because it's weird. The whole thing is weird, but it's glorious. It really is. It's super glorious. Yes, sir.
Do you have plans for any other type of financing to get going other than the Indiegogo?
So my goal for financing was originally to go to a bank, but I've got student loans I can't pay. We've got stuff that's hanging out there that just we can't do it. I spent the past 10 years struggling to keep my family together. 3 kids and a wife who she can go to work and she can come home, and then I've got to take care of everything. So if anything goes amiss and I'm working in the evenings, I had to leave work. So I've lost jobs over my family's health care. So we look like a risk on paper. But I've talked to a few bank loan officers, and they've said that even an unsuccessful crowdfunding effort, if we don't hit 50,000, but we had maybe 20 to 30,000, then you take that information and I'll look for traditional funding. I've got no fear of that. I don't look good on paper. So.
And where are you wanting to open?
In Sedalia. Yeah, where in Sedalia? Wherever fits best. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we get just $50,000, I got my eyes on a couple of different places that are going to be easy to turn into a float center, because you're worried about building a waterproof room that's also saltproof and soundproof. That's hard, and you've got to make sure that your air temperature doesn't vary too much. So you've got to worry about the air quality inside the tank as well. You can't just blow room temperature water in there; it'll cool them off, and then it's terrible. I've had one cold float. It was about 45 minutes of hell. It was terrible. And, I prefer not to do that to other people. So, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I've had various friends in Kansas City do the floats. One of them was fearful because she said, I can't swim.
Right.
But she got in there and said it wasn't an issue because she, couldn't sink down if she wanted to.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting and kind of goes with what you're saying. Another friend said he can get claustrophobic at times.
Yeah.
And he did it, and he said it was just the opposite because you can't visually see anything.
Yeah.
And the way it makes you feel, it's just like you're floating on air or
because you can't feel the water.
He said it felt like he was almost in space kind of feeling, and
So
it's kind of a spirit. He's totally not a spiritual person, but he said if there is a God, that was probably the closest I've ever been. And so I thought it was interesting. There are different perspectives, but both said they would absolutely do it again. So my question is there a recommended you recommend in between floats or?
I know people that have done 90-minute floats every day for a year plus. Okay, so like your ability to float is only limited by your commitment. Whenever you talk to people who float on a regular basis and ask them what as a center owner, what they would suggest, the first float is like, oh wow, it's a novel experience, and your body and your brain are like, ooh, this is like outer space without stars, because it is. You get in there and you float. There's no way to sink. You lose track of your body if you stay still. And you don't feel anything. It's an amazing sensation. And for me, a lot of times when I float, I get this, it's almost like a head over heels, slow rotational feeling, like you're just spinning through space. And it's something you sink into. It feels really good. Some people will be alarmed by that, but it's amazing, especially when you're used to a slightly uncomfortable bed. Which, I don't know. I don't want to judge you guys' beds. But it's an amazing sensation. There's no way to sink. It's pretty fantastic all the way around. And for people who do feel a little claustrophobic, getting in the tank, roll up the towel, stick it in the door, don't close the door. Problem solved. Lay with that end. Usually within a couple of floats, people will close the door and put their head on the other end because they realize that they don't want the interruptions of the light. They don't want the interruptions of the sound. Because when you get in there and you've gotten to that theta state and you're finally able to think clearly about really complex decisions that you're trying to make on a regular basis, the answers just come for a lot of people. They've done studies where it's actually increased the people's cognitive ability. That's a weird thing. Yeah, you will get smarter if you float. There's not a lot of things that people can say that about. Oh, now, throwing them under the bus. But yeah, no, it's an interesting effect because your brain has the ability to cycle out the bad stuff and bring in the good stuff. And most of the time, and this is kind of this is something that I've come across in my research, we're dealing with the traumas of our youth that we haven't processed. And that informs you on how to behave. And a lot of times when you see people lashing out and they're angry and they're that jerk in line at, X gas station, like those people, they're the ones that need to float. They're the ones that need the ability to figure out what they're doing to make the better decisions. So, yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned you would like to have a 24-hour facility. Is there someone that has to be there to help you in and out, or is it something that you can go do on your own, be able to get in and out on your own and not have to have the staff there? Because of sanitation requirements, everybody uses at least one towel, okay? So between the towels and the sanitation requirements, because you go in between each floater and you completely clean the environment so that it's a reset for every single person. No water on the walls. It's got to be clean. You use hydrogen peroxide as a cleaner to kill everything off that might be in there, and check the facility. So there has to be someone there at all times. There's some facilities where they're rare and they're nowhere near here, where they've got members, and the members themselves are trained to do all the stuff that they would need to, and they just have a pass and they just go in and float. So, but that's super rare. There's always going to be someone at our facility for safety requirements, because the last thing you want to hear is that someone died in your float tank, there have been 2 deaths. Let's talk about that. Okay. There have been 2 deaths associated with floating. One guy died because of intramuscular injections. The guy was experimenting with drugs and he overdid it, so he overdosed in a tank. And the other guy was practicing holotropic breathing. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it's a type of breathing exercise that can clear the mind. It can do a lot of things physiologically. It helps with stress and depression and these things. But this guy was doing it in the tank, and he did an inverted float. And he passed out, and he aspirated, and he drowned in the tank. 2 people. This industry's been around for 6, almost 7 decades. Safe. It's very safe. There was a lady in, I want to say, Texas a while back. It was not being properly monitored. She slipped, and she hit her head, aspirated a little bit of water, and she passed away in the hospital a few days later. But this is someone who she was doing poorly to begin with. But, these things happen. You guys still get on airplanes and get in vehicles, right? It's a lot safer than that. I can guarantee it. So, yes, sir.
How long does the tubs, the chambers actually last? I mean, is there a longevity that you have to actually replace them every like 5-10 years like a car?
Right. There are floats that have been in use for over 20 years. It depends on how well they're made and how the ease of use. You will have to change out the plumbing, like obviously the filtration system and stuff like that over the course of time. But actually having the tank itself, depending on how you build it, yeah, it'll last quite a while. So, yes, ma'am.
So you mentioned that you work at Body Retreat here in Sedalia, and your wife teaches in Waverly.
Yeah, we live in Waverly.
Wow. It's a little bit of a drive for you, isn't it?
Yeah, well, when it comes down to it, if someone you love is hurting and you want to help them, what do? Everything, you know. So that's where we're at. I'm from Marshall, and I would have done this in Marshall, but Marshall's really tough on new businesses, and there's not a lot of forward thinking with some of the things that happen. I mean, look at the solar panels over there. Useless. I'm worried about stuff like that. That's also my anxiety. Welcome to the party, anxiety. Kelly.
So I'm going to ask the final question again. Is there anything else that we can do as a community for you?
Get online, Facebook, Instagram. I've got really beautiful pictures. We're doing a lot of things. We're pairing with Midland Printing. They're going to be doing all of our postcards, and we're looking at a calendar as well. Share. Let people know what's going on. You know, if you care about first responders or nurses or teachers, not that you have to, you know, or if you care about veterans, because our goal is to take care of these people. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.